there, a very good morning to you and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lavina Emma. So on today's show, many thanks for joining us on this edition of the program. Today we are discussing the high feed costs and its implication on the fishing industry in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria's fish industry has been hard hit currently by feed prices that keep climbing and threatening businesses, especially the small and medium-scale businesses in the sector. The subsector, which before now has been thriving, but right now is being stifled by the over 100% increase in the price of fish feed in the past 1 year. Now, what I mean by this is that, for example, the price of fish feed as at 2023, a 50-kilogram bag of fish feed as at 2023 was going for 35,000 naira. But right now, as of July 2024, a 50-kilogram bag of fish feed is currently going for 74,000 naira. Now, that's over 100% increase. So as the demand for protein-rich food sources continues to rise, fish farmers in the country face a huge challenge: how to maintain profitability in the face of the rising cost of feed, which, by the way, accounts for up to 80% of production costs. Now, with the country's reliance on imported food exchange rates and global market fluctuations, which have added to the uncertainty in the sector. Now, the factors behind this price surge are multifaceted. First up is the global supply chain disruptions, and that has been coupled with the increasing cost of raw materials like soybeans, wheat, and maize. And this has had a significant ripple effect in the price of the fish feed and also the fish itself when it's been sold to the final consumer. Now, the impact of these feed price hikes is undeniable. First of all, many fish farmers are struggling to maintain profitability as production costs outpace selling prices. In addition, this has led to a situation whereby this has threatened the viability of businesses for fish farmers and also for fish traders. And this has the potential to disrupt the entire fish value chain. So what can be done to deal with these challenges? So this morning, we'll hear from an industry expert on the causes of fish feed price hikes, their impacts on fish farmers, consumers, and potential solutions to mitigate these challenges. We have a guest joining us this morning virtually to discuss how the prices of fish feed is affecting Nigeria's fish industry. So my guest this morning, or rather our guest joining us virtually, is Sola Kolawole Onikoyi. He's a farmer, he's a consulting urban and regional planner. He's also a sustainable development advocate. In addition, he's the founder of the Rural Environment Empowerment Initiative. That's let me just call it an acronym for TREE Initiative, and it's a non-profit organization with interest in climate change, food security, and sustainable livelihood. So thank you for joining us on the program, Sola Kolawole Onikoyi.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
To you also, and I'm glad to have you on Market Insights this morning.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so there has been a recent, like I mentioned, there has been an over 100% increase in the price of fish feed in Nigeria, and it's currently affecting Nigeria's fishing industry. The price of fish feed has risen from last year. A 50-kilogram bag of fish feed was 35,000 naira, but as of July 2024, the price has increased to 74,000 naira for a 50-kilogram bag of fish feed. Now, how is this challenge affecting Nigerian fish farmers with this increase in the price of fish feed?
Well, thank you once again for having me on this program. Like every other sector, farmers are also, groaning under the current situation, especially concerning the rising cost of inputs, and particularly fish feed in the fish sector. For players in the aqua sector, it has not been easy because, farmers are basically takers when it comes to increment or instability in prices. it is always difficult for farmers to for farmers to raise prices unilaterally. So it's a challenging time. It's difficult to know how to project in terms of what you want to produce and how you intend to go about it. What I'm trying to drive at is the fact that when you begin to have narrow profit margins, which ordinarily will also affect, in most cases, capital, except you have to begin to look at alternatives to support production. So basically, it has not been an interesting time for farmers in the fish sector, just like the other sectors too. And people are trying to cope, and everything now depends on both internal and external resilience.
What alternatives can these fish farmers look at? Because I mentioned that the price of what the fish feed mostly consists of is soy food, soybean, it's maize, is also wheat. So what alternatives can fish farmers look at?
Yeah, if you look at the composition of the let's take for instance what I use personally, the floating feed. It's a composition of fish meal, soy, and maize for energy. And if you look at as of December last year, maize, for instance, was 300 or thereabouts per kg, and now we are going to 850 per kg. Same thing for soya beans. Fish meal is even off the roof because we import the fish meal that is used in that feed. And then you look at what can you do to break even, and then we begin to think of alternatives. For some of us, those alternatives are not good. Not good because of the health consequences, the environmental consequences, and then on the long run, people don't get value. It affects the quality of production also, because when you begin to use alternatives like the common one around, people use blood waste, hatchery waste, poultry waste, and in some instances you have people using life stock waste in terms of intestines and things like that. So when you look at these alternatives, they are not really good health-wise, except there is a system that refines them such that they are not contaminated choices that we have to make. I know some people grow maggots, but depending on maggots to raise fish is not in the best interest of the end consumer and even the market. And at the end of the day, all these things come to play in the economics of production, because when you look at the timelines in delivering from raising them from fingerlings to table size weight, you discover that a lot of time elapses, and then at the end of the day, the quality of the fish that you get on your table is not what we used to have before this season of hike in prices.
Okay, yes, I understand what you're saying, but is there an alternative, an organic alternative for fish farmers to consider in our country?
I just told you there are alternatives, but I also told you the implications of the alternatives, because there is no shortcut to the neck of the palm tree, so to speak. I just spoke to you about the alternatives.
We know that these feeds are imported. Yes, we know that. But what opportunities exist for local feed production and sourcing in Nigeria?
Now the challenge is, much of what we import, and for those even that produce locally, is that some of the inputs, we have to bring them into the country. We don't have everything. For instance, the one of the most important inputs in any fish feed is the fish meal, which we bring into the country, and nutrients, additives that we add to these feeds. But you see, locally, it is not as if we cannot produce these things. What we do locally mostly, what you see around in local mills is the sinking, what we call sinking feed. They don't float. Their own feeds don't float. They sink. It's just the technology gap in production. But basically, the challenge with local production as of today has to do mostly with the challenges that we are having generally in securing or sourcing raw materials. The places where the bulk of these raw materials come from are technically under siege. We have issues of insecurity where farmers can no longer produce as they ought to. And if you look at the trend, the most inaccessible areas right now where farmers are finding it difficult to grow and produce is the grains belt. And that is where we have all the grains in the country coming up in massive quantity. So when you have a situation where maize farmers cannot really grow maize again, or they are finding it difficult to access their farms, and then soya farmers are also experiencing the same thing, then supply into the sector becomes difficult, and then you need to begin to look at importing instead of sourcing raw materials locally. And this discourages also local producers, because at the end of the day, the little that they have in the market becomes expensive compared to when you import these things. For instance, if you go to the market and you are getting your maize for 850 naira per kg, and then when you import, you are importing with a threshold of about 600 naira, you would not want to go to the local market to source your raw materials. You would prefer to import. And that is just the challenge that we're having right now, because these inputs in country are not readily available. So, and when the desirable is not available, the available becomes the desirable. So everybody's looking at imports.
Okay, yes. Okay, Mr. Onikoyi, yes, I understand what you're saying, but yes, you mentioned insecurity as a cause. Yes, that's one of the leading causes of this hike in fish feed right now. But how can the government and industry stakeholders support fish farmers in navigating these challenges to ensure a long-term viability of the sector?
Well, these are issues that we've been, conversing about and flogging, and it appears that we want to overflog this particular issue of government intervention. Now, the most important thing for me, I think, is for government to see that there's a need to address this issue of insecurity, because that is the starting point. Production, the most fundamental and the foundation of this whole thing is how do we bring down the prices of the raw materials used in the production of this feed? Then how also do we also bring down the prices of drivers of the production industries? Because most of these industries also depend on diesel, and you know what the price of diesel is today. Then transportation is also affected by the rising cost of diesel and other products needed to, move vehicles across the country. Then you also have the fact that the naira has, nosedived, and some of these major inputs into the production of feed also have gone up. So generally, the areas where government needs to intervene, they are clear. Government needs to fix security. The issue of insecurity needs to be solved. We need to look at foreign exchange. Then also the price of petroleum products that drive most of the production factories and industries around.
Okay, like you said, because of the current challenges we're facing in the country. Yes, it's a work in progress. The government is working on fixing these challenges from transportation, insecurity, the price of diesel, just to quote from what you have said now. But in the event that currently these fish feeds are being imported into Nigeria, so how can we, like, how do I put, okay, how are changes in the global market trends and in addition to our exchange rates? Now, how do we ensure that this is not going to completely affect our fish feed industry in Nigeria? What steps would you recommend for fish farmers, because they have to buy these imported fish feed? So what steps would you recommend that they should follow to avoid being completely crushed by the weight of these challenges?
Well, the most important thing right now is access to capital, because at the end of the day, the fish needs to eat. If they don't eat, they die. So, what do we do to make sure that we do not, collapse the sector? Like I said earlier, there is internal resilience and external resilience. Most farmers may not be able to have both, but for those who are major players in the sector, we'll need to up our game to look at alternative long-term capital sources, because we know that things will not continue like this. At a point, there will be stability in the system. At a point, this system will stabilize itself. So, in order to remain in the business and in the sector, one will need to look at the possibility of accessing long-term facilities that can make one stay afloat in these hard times. Because sincerely, whatever we discuss about this issue of the rising cost of feed, everything still boils down to the fact that how many farmers, especially in the small and medium sector, can have access to funds to cushion the effects of the current trend. I think, in simple terms, that is just what we should be looking at as farmers in the sector.
Easy access to capital for these farmers will help to actually cushion the effects. Okay, let's talk about you. I know you run an NGO. So, okay, you run an NGO. So what would you recommend as to how, what would you advise these farmers? You're also a farmer, you run an NGO in addition. So how would you gather them together to ensure they can get access to these loans, for example?
So our NGO is basically a not-for-profit, but we have food security as one of our areas of focus, and it is of interest to us that we are able to communicate with farmers on the possibility. Like I used to, for me, I used to tell farmers to integrate when it comes to agriculture. You need to look at the possibility of integration. If you look at some of the fish farmers around the country, some of them also keep poultry. Then some of them also are crop farmers. So as as an NGO, what we try to communicate is that for sustainable agriculture, farmers should begin to look at integration. When you have, for instance, a fish farm, you can also use that to also grow a plantation, because for those of us that use concrete tanks, for instance, we need to periodically release and change water. So that water, instead of going into waste, goes into irrigating our plantation. So integration is another way to look at it, and that is what we preach as an NGO to farmers, that so that you have an alternative source of income to support fish farming. Be that as it may, we also encourage farmers to look at the possibility of, harvesting their fish early and then drying them to, be able to make some money before, instead of the long term, keeping them to weigh 2 kg or 3 or 5 kg. So we tell them that even at 1 or 2 kg, you harvest your fish and then you dry them. Then as an NGO also, we've been very, very instrumental in organizing trainings, especially for fish processing, drying for small scale farmers and things like that. We've gotten support to, train people on how to, do that in urban centers in particular, so that people will not continue to think that storage will continue to remain a challenge. So when you have your fish dried, you can also keep them over a period of time for the market. So as an NGO, our intervention has also been to equip and empower farmers on areas where they can improve along the value chain, and especially as concerning storage, processing, and even markets. So for us, we cannot actually work on the financing aspect because we're not for profit. But that doesn't mean periodically we do not get sponsors who tell us to bring farmers together in clusters and give them, update them knowledge-wise in that area, or transfer knowledge to them that can, better their lot. So as an NGO, we are also in the knowledge enterprise to equip and empower farmers.
Okay. Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Onikoyi. So now, as we know, in Nigeria, 80% of Nigeria's domestic production is done by artisanal, small-scale fishermen from the coastly inshores of the creeks of the Niger Delta, lagoons, inland rivers, and lakes. Those are the people that bring in these fishes for people to buy, and they can start their fish farming businesses. But this rising cost of feed has forced many of these fish farmers to think of, they're looking for money to actually buy this fish feed. So what steps would you take to ensure that these small-scale fish farmers do not abandon this business? Because the fish industry in Nigeria it has the potential to create a lot of jobs, but if fish feed, which is something that is very important to the industry, is very expensive, it has the potential to make fish farmers abandon the business. So what steps would you take for these fish farmers to mitigate this crisis right now?
Yeah, good enough. Yeah, we have, there are some states where you have artisanal fish farmers, those that, depend on water bodies to raise their fish. They are different from those of us on the upland where we need to create our own ponds and then fish farms to actually grow this fish. So in instances like that, you have, most of the states have ministries of water resources and fisheries. Some of them, they have it under the agriculture ministry. So I think the most important thing is for these agencies of government to actually see the fish sector in their states as very important to sustainable livelihood. So I think interventions coming from state governments and even local governments in these areas will go a long way to alleviate the sufferings of the challenges being confronted by fish farmers. And then they can also begin to look at tailoring palliatives towards fish farmers. In those areas, for instance, there is nothing that stops them from, subsidizing inputs into fish farms. For instance, they could come up with a scheme that will give an extra bag of 15 kg to any farmer that buys a bag of 15 kg from any of the certified outlets, either by the state government or the local government. You see, on the long run, what we need is a social intervention system that will keep these critical farmers afloat, because protein plays a significant role in nutrition and and even child growth. So we cannot take fish out of the loop. And if we look at this as also a health concern, I think it will not be difficult for state governments and even local governments to come up with moderate schemes that can support fish farmers till we have stability in the system, and then the prices become bearable for us to continue as a sector.
Okay, now I want to get your thoughts on this now, your opinion on this now. Research. Now, what role can research and development play in improving feed efficiency and reducing costs in Nigeria's fish industry, the fish feed industry?
It can play a very, very significant role. Like I just told you, the aspect of technology transfer is critical. We need to see more of our industries being retooled and equipped to produce the kind of floating feeds that we import locally, not just in some places, but across the country. We need to, we need to look forward to a situation where investors in the sector can replicate production lines that will also give us the same things that we import, and then we begin to produce these things locally. And that will take a lot of research from our research institutions to be able to domesticate these technologies so that it can work for our own sector. I am of the view that this is doable and this is possible because we've seen how even the feed for the poultry sector is being produced locally. And we even have a lot of, small and medium scale industries producing quality poultry feed. So if we can have that for the poultry sector, there's nothing that stops us from having it for the fish sector too.
Before we talk about profitability and sustainability for fish farmers now, if you were part of the Nigerian government right now, how would you recommend that the government should prioritize subsidizing fish feed or focus on policies that encourage greater competition and innovation within the fish feed production sector?
Well, on the short run, I would suggest interventions that can, come in form of palliative to fish farmers. I saw some states, for instance, they did some palliative for poultry farmers. It may look insignificant, but it is still a targeted intervention. So for fish farmers also, it will not be out of place to have targeted interventions, especially in the area of the fish feed. I just mentioned in the course of our initial conversation that a subsidy system of one bag, buy one bag and get one bag free would be a kind of intervention that may, make impact on the immediate challenges faced by these farmers. And then while we are looking at what can be done in the immediate, policies that will address, like we have said, production, the sources of raw materials for production need to be put in place. We don't need to take these insecurity issues lightly any longer. This needs to be addressed. Farmers must be able to assess their farms, because once we are able to fix the production aspect of raw materials, to a large extent, the prices will drop drastically. Then for inputs that we need to bring into the country, we also need to begin to look at how do we produce these things even locally also, because it's not as if we cannot also produce these inputs locally, but we have to have a long-term plan to know, to be able to, say that by in the next 5 years, we'll not be importing fish meal because we produce them locally. In the next 5 years, we'll not be importing lysine and all the inputs that we have in our meal. We'll not even be importing soya beans or maize. We don't have any business importing some of these things, for God's sake. So I think our policies on the long run will have to just address the production of these components that we use in the production of feed for the fish, the aquaculture sector, where we do fish production. So basically, if I have the opportunity, I'll be looking at the immediate interventions while we start to work on the long-term processes to make sure that these things are produced in the country, and then to a large extent we are able to have stability in the prices of feed for the sector.
Thank you for that, Mr. Onikoyi. Okay, now the fish farmers now, how can they balance the need for profitability and with the need for sustainability and environmental responsibility in the face of this fish feed hike?
Okay, so it all boils down to the fact that individual farmers or collectively, ingenuity will have to come to play because, like I told you, farmers are price takers. Price takers in the sense that when people buy their fish for 2,000 naira yesterday, and then it is going to be difficult for you to come tomorrow and say it is now 3,000 naira. So it is not easy for farmers. It is hard on farmers to begin to change the farm gate prices of produce, and fish is also incidentally one of those things. So for fish farmers, we have gotten to a point where we will just need to also increase the price at which we sell our fish per kg commensurately with the hike in the cost of feed and other inputs. That is the only way we can stay afloat in these hard times, because if we don't do that, we are going to lose capital, and then over time we'll be out of business. So hard as it sounds, fish farmers are not insulated from the current situation of things, and fish farmers will also have to, at this point, begin to look at the dynamics of pricing, because my economics of production will determine my selling price. And if you look at, for instance, as of today, a kg of catfish, for instance, goes between 2,500 and 3,000 naira in some places, 4,000 as much as possible in places where they don't have clusters of fish farmers. So, and that trend will continue until we have a drop in the prices. So it is not something that is particularly different from what is happening in other sectors, especially our cousin sector, the poultry sector. It's almost the same thing. When you look at the prices of eggs in December 2023, and then you look at the price of a crate of egg this morning, you can see that it is becoming hard for farmers, and farmers at this point to break even or to stay afloat in business will need to, consider commensurate increase in, prices of produce, released into the market also.
Okay, now, as you know, fish is a very important source of protein for Nigerian consumers, for families all over the country, especially for our growing children. They need this source of protein. But right now, with this hike in fish feed, what the fish farmers are selling to the traders is very expensive. The market, a carton of Titus fish, as of last year, it used to cost 18,000 naira, but this year it's going from 36,000 naira to 38,000 naira, which is quite expensive now. So now the potential consequences of this fish feed hike on Nigerians. Now, how can the industry ensure that fish continues to remain a viable source of protein for Nigerian families?
Well, like I said, we'll try our best to continue to, as industry players, we'll try our best to continue to make fish available. Now, but the challenge will be the purchasing power of the average Nigerian, because at the end of the day, even beef that used to be cheap is no longer cheap or accessible to. It's also a source of protein that is no longer accessible, and similar with poultry products also. So for fish, that used to be the go-to protein for almost every household in the country. but the signs of the times are, are not, bearable for farmers to, fish farmers to keep it at that level. So fish farmers are struggling, and they are doing all they can to, just be in the middle of all this. But at a point, for fish, for you to continue to see that fish on your table, you need to also pay for it in one way or the other. That is just the truth about what is ongoing. Like I told you, the economics of production has a strong role to play in this. Nobody wants to produce at a loss, and then nobody wants to produce and end up, going bankrupt.
Yes, I know we have mentioned this, but these farmers, yes, we have also talked about the fact that they need to be subsidized. The fish feed farmers, they need to be some form of subsidy in the industry now. So apart from this subsidy now, other issues that they have, infrastructure issues, poor access to credit facility now. So I know that these issues are limiting farmers in this sector. So what steps would you take for both with government collaboration and also private partnerships to solve these issues? For example, the poor access to credit, insufficient infrastructure that are limiting farmers in this sector. So what steps would you suggest that they take, both the government and also with combination of the private partnership?
The private sector has a significant role to play, especially commercial banks, who would not ordinarily want to support those fish farmers. So I think what government can do is to bring everybody to the round table. Actually, as time goes on, I think one important thing we also need to have is a round table for the sector, where we have all players, including the private sector, and then state actors. Then we come to converse and discuss about the trends in the sector, and then the role that each player can play to keep this sector afloat. Because at the end of the day, it affects everybody, and this issue is about livelihood, and we cannot play with livelihood issues, because we have millions of people dependent on this sector. And aside from that, we have millions of children in school who need fish as a component part of their daily nutrition, which we cannot just overlook. By and large, at the end of the day, what I am thinking is that there should be a roundtable where we can actually come together and trash these issues to salvage the challenges in the sector.
Before we round up now, as you know, the rising cost of fish feed is part of a larger trend of the global food price inflation right now. So how can Nigeria's fish feed industry adapt to this new economic reality?
Yeah, like I said, we begin to look at alternative inputs, substitute inputs. If, for instance, maize is becoming too expensive, can we have research? Can we use sorghum? Can we look at sorghum as an alternative to maize? Can we look at can we even look at cassava as a possible source of carbohydrate in fish feed? Can we begin to look at other staples that we have in abundance that we can bring back to use under the circular economy system in the production of feed? Can we use rice waste? Is there a way that rice, the waste from paddy rice, can be converted into part of the input for fish feed? So we need to begin to look at these possible substitutes vis-a-vis alternatives to see how we can scale them, and then can we grow? Are there insects that we can use to substitute for fish meal? Are there because people grow maggot commercially and then they dry them, and then it becomes a component part of fish meal, fish food. So can we begin to look at technologies and research in that area that we can use locally to augment what we have on ground. But on the long run, we need to begin to look at these possibilities. There are possibilities that we know can fix some of these challenges, especially for the small and medium farmers in the sector.
Okay, so finally, Mr. Onikoyi, before we round up the program, could you just share your final thoughts on this whole situation? Yes, we know it's temporary, but right now this is what most fish feed farmers are going through, and it's also affecting consumers of this protein in Nigeria. So your final thoughts on this matter?
Well, my final thought is that at this junction, we should consider it important that whether the prices will go down in a few months or if it's going to take longer, we need to have it at the back of our mind that this is a sector that is critical and should not go down. We should not just let the sector die this way. We should not just let productive, well-to-do, energetic farmers go redundant suddenly because the input for their business is out of reach. So this is a conscience matter for all of us and for the leadership in particular, that we need to do what we need to do to make sure that businesses that have to do with the life of people, the livelihood of people, stay afloat and they don't just die. So our intervention should be targeted towards these particular sectors. And the fish sector is also one of those critical sectors that needs this attention, that needs to be brought into perspective when interventions are being considered for any of the sector. Food security is something that is important. The Yorubas will say, once you remove food from poverty, poverty may not really be what it used to be. So, which shows that food has a significant role to play in poverty. So, and nutrition also plays a significant role in when we are discussing food security. It's not just about getting anything, but what is the quality of the food that you are eating. So, and the fish sector.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Onikoyi, for joining us this morning on Market Insights. It's really great having you on the program as you shared your thoughts, your solutions to the fish feed price hike currently in Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us on the program this morning. So let's take a look
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's take a look at the foreign exchange rate this morning, how the dollars, pound sterling, and euro are faring for today, Tuesday, 16th July. So for the dollar, the Central Bank of Nigeria rates, it's currently selling at 1,515 naira to $1, and the pound sterling is currently selling. That's for the CBN rate, and for the parallel market rate is selling for 1,618 naira to $1. For the pound sterling, it's 1,993 naira to £1 sterling. That's the CBN rate, and at the parallel market, it's selling for 2,098 naira to £1 sterling. And for the euro, the CBN rate is 1,680 naira to €1. At the parallel market rate is 1,764 naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning. Many thanks for watching the program Market Insights this morning as we discussed Nigeria's fish feed hike and how to navigate the prices during this period. As it's a temporary situation, hopefully it will soon be out of this and fish will be more affordable, not just the fish itself, but also the fish feed. So the rising cost of this fish feed is a complex issue demanding a multi-pronged approach, which my guest went in depth into. And by exploring alternative solutions, coming up with solving our insecurity issues and infrastructure issues, and also other means of cassava and protein that can be added to the fish feed, and implementing best practices, potentially seeking government support, Nigeria's fish industry can navigate these challenges and ensure its long-term sustainability. Many thanks for watching Market Insight this morning as we discuss this issue. Do share your comments on our social media platforms. I am your host, Lovina Emma. Do stay tuned to the news updates on SOUQ News Television.